Hi, Teddy Ann here. I want to give you my take on the Rosewood case. I'm going to headline this as Growing by Knowing. There are a few essential things that the Rosewood executives need to know as they develop a growth strategy. And those are the things I'm going to highlight in this presentation. There are two major key issue buckets that we need to look at. One is, what is the corporate growth strategy? Because corporate growth strategies must be paired with the target customers that they are seeking to attract. A number of hotel chains, for instance Hilton and Marriott, have done their corporate growth strategies by creating individual brands that then are specifically targeted to the broad spectrum of different customers that are in the travel market. So for instance, JW Marriott is the high-end luxury brand for Marriott, and that attracts the same kind of customers as the Rosewood hotels would attract. Fairmont, on the other hand, or Fairfield Inns, is the brand that attracts the middle class customers that would be needing hotels. The second key issue is the branding strategy. And again, that branding strategy has to be paired with the target customer that the corporate growth strategy has identified. Right now for Rosewood, these are the high-end luxury customers. And it's interesting to note that these customers yield high margins. Remember that Rosewood's hotels are able to generate a higher room rate than their competitors. So those margins must be protected. To get our arms around these key issues, we have to begin with the current state of affairs. Currently, the competitive advantage for Rosewood hotels are their unique location-centered experiences that they are able to offer their high-end customers. A second current thing that we need to ascertain is the brand position. And the branding framework, the brand culture, can be summed up in this idea of sense of place. That is a highly distinct and very valued image. And it's also, to date, been exquisitely delivered in the executional surround that is highlighted in each one of the hotels. Each one of the hotels is very intentional about bringing forth this sense of place as unique and very distinctive opportunity for customers to be able to enjoy. The third current thing we need to look at is what is a competitive disadvantage, and it's a distribution issue. There are far fewer locations for Rosewood hotels than there are for the other corporate brands. The data from 2003, and remember the case is done in 2007, was that there were 12 Rosewood hotels versus the 46 to 48 for Four Seasons and I think it's Ritz-Carlton. This is a key factor in that cross-purchasing metric of Rosewood only getting 5% cross rate versus 10 to 15% cross rate. It has more to do with where the hotels are and the distribution disadvantage than it does customers' interest in the individual hotels. So there are driving questions that we need to put out on the table as we consider both the growth strategy and the branding strategy. The first question is, how might Rosewood maintain that core competency distinctive that they call sense of place? The second driving question is, how do they make sure that they maintain their current customer base? You can't grow by losing your current customers. So they need to be very, very savvy of that. The second question that they have to ask is, how might they balance the possible conflicting growth drivers of increasing penetration with increasing buying rate in crossover sales? One of the things that I don't think they've got a firm handle on is, what is their growth strategy? Are they doing a buying rate growth strategy where they're trying to entice their current customers to purchase more frequently? Or are they doing an increased penetration strategy in which they are seeking to drive more customers, new customers, to Rosewood? That needs to be firmly discerned before you can really start messing with the brand. So let's consider some key information. Here are two pieces of information that I think are critical to discerning what the growth strategy ought to be and what the branding strategy ought to be. As I mentioned before, Rosewood has far fewer locations than the other corporate brands. That is going to impact buying rate. And that's going to impact buying rate more than corporate branding is going to impact buying rate. People purchase based on destination, not the hotel brand. And so if Rosewood doesn't have a lot of hotels and a lot of different destinations, the corporate branding option is not going to help things, because even if people want to stay with, quote, Rosewood hotels, they don't have Rosewood hotels and locations that they want to travel to. So that's a big issue. A second piece of key information is understanding the the luxury hotel customers. They are a breed of their own. They value exclusivity. They don't want a lot of people being able to come to their hotels, the hotels that they choose to stay in. They really value exclusivity. And because of that, any kind of mass marketing strategies may drive them away. If they start seeing their favorite hotel advertised throughout all of social media or on television programs that are watched by, quote, the masses, they're not going to be interested in that hotel anymore because it denigrates the exclusivity of that brand. So Rosewood has to be very, very careful with how they change their communication and their image with their key customers. I think the evidence speaks for a blended approach to branding Rosewood, as well as leveraging the individual location brands. I think that what they need to do is market exquisite and consistent operations. They also need to market exquisite destination and experience, as well as market exquisite image and of exclusivity, of privacy, and of style. And by marketing those three things through their brands plural, they'll be able to continue to appeal to that high-end target market. So let's consider some key information. Here are two pieces of information that I think are critical to discerning what the growth strategy ought to be and what the branding strategy ought to be. As I mentioned before, Rosewood has far fewer locations than the other corporate brands. That is going to impact buying rate. And that's going to impact buying rate more than corporate branding is going to impact buying rate. People purchase based on destination, not the hotel brand. And so if Rosewood doesn't have a lot of hotels and a lot of different destinations, the corporate branding option is not going to help things, because even if people want to stay with, quote, Rosewood hotels, they don't have Rosewood hotels and locations that they want to travel to. So that's a big issue. A second piece of key information is understanding the luxury hotel customers. They are a breed of their own. They value exclusivity. They don't want a lot of people being able to come to their hotels, the hotels that they choose to stay in. They really value exclusivity. And because of that, any kind of mass marketing strategies may drive them away. If they start seeing their favorite hotel advertised throughout all of social media or on television programs that are watched by, quote, the masses, they're not going to be interested in that hotel anymore because it denigrates the exclusivity of that brand. So Rosewood has to be very, very careful with how they change their communication and their image with their key customers. Allow me to give you a little anecdotal evidence of how the high-end luxury hotel customer thinks. This weekend I was in Chicago and I price lined a really, really cheap rate for a five-star hotel in downtown Chicago. Now, I'm schlepping around with my typical middle-class attire, my typical middle-class luggage, and even have a cooler. Peter and I get on the elevator to leave, and we are, and already in the elevator is a very, very put-together woman. She has her Louis Vuitton purse on her shoulder, her luggage is fine, she looks like $1,000,000. I get on the elevator, and she looks me up and down. She looks at my luggage, she looks at our stuff, she looks at me, she looks at our stuff, and she's not impressed. And her face just says it all. But the most telling part about this little encounter is my husband Peter is a very, very tall, very, very big man. She's in the back of the elevator, and as soon as the elevator doors open, she pushes her way past Peter to get out of that elevator as fast as she could. I think that she was feeling oppressed by the presence of a middle-class person in her exclusive hotel. I believe the marketing situation calls for what I'm going to call a blended branding approach. With this blended branding approach, what we would be doing is we would be marketing exquisite destination and the experience that comes from being in these incredible destinations. Target customers desire the opportunity to fully experience these marvelous destinations, and they want to do that in a high-end sort of a way. They want to experience these destinations in ways that the ordinary tourist would not experience them. And so that is one aspect of a blended branding approach. I pulled these explanations off the current website for Rosewood Hotels, and while these are from 2017, they began to talk about their individual locations in these kind of ways pretty much immediately as far back as 2007, 2008. And yet there is something to be said for marketing exquisite and consistent operations. These target customers are willing to pay for high-end services. They want them, and they desire the ability to trust that their expectations will be met. So the corporate branding, the umbrella branding of Rosewood Hotels serves this target market by signaling guaranteed location to location. The service and the operations are going to be exquisite. The third aspect of this blended branding approach is to market the exquisite image that Rosewood Hotels can have as far as exclusivity, privacy, and above all, style. High-end target customers purchase image, and high-end image is defined by limited availability. That's why a Louis Vuitton purse is so expensive. It's not just because of its brand, it's because they don't manufacture tons of them. The other aspect we need to understand is wealthy people value privacy. Unlike the Kardashians, most wealthy people really want to be anonymous when they travel. They want to simply enjoy the experience, and they don't want to be called out and noticed. That happens in the rest of their lives, in their local communities. When they travel, they want to be anonymous. High-end target customers know style, and they value the graceful expression of style, and they expect style in the things that they purchase. All of the above factors that I've just shared about the target customer, about the Rosewood brand, about its distribution of having fewer hotels than other places, and about what we know of the distinctive that they have in these locales. I'm recommending a dual branding strategy. What a dual branding strategy would do would leverage the Rosewood corporate brand on all the things that we'll call the operational aspects of their locations. These would be anything that has to do with how the hotels operate to provide the services for their customers. Things like reservations, all the facility operations, the concierge services, and any kind of collateral branding. What we mean by collateral branding are the things that you would put a brand on that might not be the primary branding, but the collateral branding. So, for instance, all of the service workers' uniforms would carry the Rosewood brand. Any of the soaps and towels and robes and all those things would carry the Rosewood brand. So you would market the Rosewood brand as the underpinning of all the exquisite operational aspects of each location. But at the same time, you would leverage the individual brands of each hotel. And you would leverage the fact that there are attraction aspects where these destinations are. And so you drive the distinctives of each location setting as the reason to visit the hotel. Then you would also do cross-selling by selling the other location settings as what I'm going to call a must-see and be seen places to visit. You'd also maintain the exclusivity image of each setting as an only place on earth like it sort of experience. And you'd communicate that with the full and proper experience that each one of these unique settings would have that's available only through the Rosewood family of hotels and resorts. So this dual branding strategy would always lead with the branding of the individual location. And then it would add as an additional point that hotel or that resort is a part of the Rosewood collection of hotels and resorts. So it would be the Carlisle, a Rosewood collection hotel. The Mansion on Turtle Creek, a Rosewood collection resort. Little Dick's Bay, a Rosewood collection resort. Now, on their website today, what's happened is they have now moved from this dual branding strategy that they launched in 2007, 2008, and they've now moved to a more Rosewood hotel-centered branding strategy, and that makes perfect sense, but it's been 10 years. They gradually moved towards that kind of a branding strategy where they now are leading with Rosewood and following with the individual locations. But the other thing that's happened since 2007 is they've added multiple locations. So part of their growth strategy has been to add many, many locations. There are three major considerations in doing a dual branding strategy. One is that you would gradually introduce the Rosewood umbrella brand. You would do it on operational aspects immediately, and then you would do a marketing messaging over time as you added locations, and then as you slowly seeded in the minds of your target customers what the Rosewood brand stood for. The second consideration is that you would never, never, ever undermine the location brand equities. The corporate brand has to be created in a way that would accommodate the individuality of each location. What's really awesome and one of the competitive advantages that Rosewood had in 2007 is they already had this idea of sense of place. And they could use this theming umbrella as a lever for the capacity to accommodate individuality. The third thing that they need to always consider in their dual branding strategy is to equate the Rosewood brand with high touch and interpersonal marketing. One of the ways that they can do that is to focus on site when people are actually visiting the hotels and do some vigorous cross sales at that point. So you'd play up the opportunities to experience the other locations and their locales. You would do this in high touch at the check-in desk, when you talk to the concierge, in the restaurant, saying, you love this restaurant, you ought to check out the restaurant that we have at Little Dick's. and understand and sell the cuisine and things like that in that location. The other thing that we do operationally is set up systems that would allow your current customers who are staying in your hotels to book quickly and close a sale on their next trip. And even anything that's mass executed, any marketing tactics that are mass executed, have to be done so in a way that they appear to be highly individualized. So I've talked about the branding strategies, but now I have to go back to the growth strategies. I think one of the issues in this case that make it difficult is it doesn't seem like the executives at Rosewood have got a firm handle on what their growth strategies ought to be, or at least they're not communicating it well to those that they are leading. Remember, I said there's only two ways to grow a business: either you increase buying rate or you increase penetration. In this case, what they're really trying to do is increase buying rate. They're trying to get their current high-end customers to not only stay at their favorite Rosewood hotel, but also to go to some of the other locations. That will take a vigorous direct pitch to current customers. And we need to entice them to the other locations by letting them know about the other locations first, so build awareness. And then secondly, highlight how exquisite that locale is and how exquisite the Rosewood Hotel at that locale is. You do that and promise consistent Rosewood quality in their lodging experience and highlight the unique experience that they will have at being at that place. So it's an exquisite local setting captured in a perfectly tailored local luxury hotel. And yet, growth strategies also require a penetration strategy. How are you going to go deeper into the high-end customer target market so that you are attracting not only the customers you've always attracted, but you're getting trial among customers you haven't attracted yet? But you have to remember that we want to stay with the high-end customer. You don't want to fall into the trap of thinking that your best thing to do is to entice secondary markets or other people who are really not high-end customers or can't be consistently high-end customers. Because remember, for every customer that you entice, you want to also get them to buy more frequently. And it's only going to be the high-end customers that are going to have the money to be able to buy frequently into the Rosewood, to travel to Rosewood locations and afford a Rosewood hotel. So you focus on high-end customers. One of the things I don't think Rosewood understood very well is what was the decision-making process for these high-end customers. So they need to do some research on that. And as they better understand the decision-making process, then they can leverage the decision-making means to be able to speak into those decision points and make customers aware and interested and enticed towards a Rosewood brand. Also, they could consider cross-marketing at other high-end image-laden products. Now, it's not to say that you can't market to a secondary market. What I mean by that is there can be a segment of customers out there that are not high-end, super wealthy people, but they do want to have a once-in-a-lifetime exquisite travel experience. So we can look at these and consider them one-off sales. You can get them to come in once, but you probably aren't going to get them to come in twice. So who would be in the secondary market? Consider people who are doing destination weddings, people who want to really celebrate an important life milestone like an anniversary. Or perhaps it's that individual that says, you know, I've worked really hard all my life. Just once I want to travel on an exquisite vacation. The third growth strategy that the Rosewood Corporation needs to consider is increasing location availability. One of the biggest disadvantages that the Rosewood Corporation has versus other high-end luxury hotels is that they simply don't have as many locations available to their customers as the Four Seasons or these other hotels do. And so an important way to grow the brand, grow the business, is to acquire more locations. And this way you've got more destination choices for your current customers to increase buying rate via. May I add some final thoughts? Your teams did a very good job of working out this case study. It's a difficult case study with a lot of different things going on in it. And yet you were able to look it over, pull out pertinent information, and deal with the issues at hand. I wasn't expecting you to be able to nail this resolution on this case. It is really a very, very high level, complex case, but it's a really good one for us to use an exemplar of how you come at understanding not only branding, but also growth strategy. And so good job in wrestling with this case. The other thing that I wanted to note for you is that I am attaching into Moodle, or placing into Moodle, a PDF that I have put together that tells the Rosewood story in the different things that they have done since 2007. So you can see how they, in stages, played out a branding strategy that moved from the individual brands to the Rosewood collection branding to the overall umbrella branding, all the while adding locations. The business has also changed hands a number of times, and you can see how over time the equity that was built in this company became more and more valuable, and so that it was easily then sold off to other corporate entities. So with that, I thank you for listening to me, and I hope you've enjoyed this case study.